Dalí shattered the chains of imagination and taught us one simple truth: reality is only as limitless as you believe it to be. In his world, clocks didn't just tick, they melted and stretched, defying the boundaries of time. Elephants walked on impossibly long legs, floating above surreal landscapes, while faces twisted and morphed into the shapes of dreams. For Salvador Dalí, the world was not a place of rules and reason, it was a canvas where the extraordinary could become real with just a stroke of his brush. As you listen tonight, let go of the world you know. Find a comfortable spot, let your body relax, and take a deep breath. Allow the soft whispers to guide you as we wander through the endless corridors of Dalí's imagination. This is a journey into the surreal, where reality bends, where time dissolves, and where your imagination is free to roam as far as you'll allow. Follow the strange, beautiful landscapes Dalí created, where the impossible becomes possible, and where every moment invites you to dream a little deeper. Don't forget to subscribe to Whisper Tales for more journeys like this. And now, close your eyes, let your mind drift, and let Salvador Dalí's dreamscapes wash over you like a gentle, endless wave. Once upon a time, in a small, sleepy town named Figueres, nestled between the rolling hills of Spain, a child was born under a blanket of shimmering stars. His name was Salvador Dalí. From the moment he opened his eyes, the world seemed different to him. The colors were brighter, the shadows deeper, and the shapes of things, well, they whispered secrets to him that no one else could hear. As a boy, Salvador was curious, more curious than most. The skies above him weren't just blue, they were endless oceans filled with floating mysteries. The fields weren't just fields, they were places where time slowed down and clocks melted like the warm sun on a summer's day. Even the ants crawling in the earth seemed to him like miniature explorers, carrying the weight of the world on their tiny backs. His imagination was a wild, untamed garden where dreams and reality twined together like ivy climbing a forgotten wall. While other children were playing games, young Salvador was often lost in thought, his mind drifting far away into a place where the ordinary became extraordinary. But Dalí's childhood wasn't always filled with daydreams and wonder. No, there were storms that darkened his skies too. His father, a stern man of rules and order, could not understand the world Salvador lived in. He wanted his son to be practical, to follow the path of reason. But Salvador, even as a child, knew that he was destined for something far beyond the ordinary, something that couldn't be confined to rules or reason. And so, his dreams grew louder. Every night, as he lay beneath the stars, he imagined that they were speaking to him, telling him stories of places that existed only in the deepest corners of his mind. In his dreams, the world was not as it seemed. It was a place where clocks melted, where elephants stood on delicate spider-like legs, and where time itself could stretch like a rubber band, twisting and bending to his will. Little Salvador Dalí was not like the others. He saw the world through eyes that were destined to change it. His brushes, though still untouched, were waiting. His canvas, though still blank, was ready. And one day, his visions, those wild, untamable dreams, would burst forth onto the canvas for all to see. Tonight, as we wander through the labyrinth of Dalí's imagination, remember, his story, like his art, is not just about what we see, it's about what we feel, what we dream. Close your eyes, and let Salvador's world wrap around you, like a blanket of stars, pulling you gently into the dreamscape where the real and the surreal become one. Salvador's early years were filled with magic, though not the kind you might expect. It was the quiet kind, the magic that hides in the cracks of everyday life, waiting to be discovered by those who dare to look closely enough. He was the second child named Salvador. His parents had lost their first son, also named Salvador, just 9 months before little Dalí was born. The shadow of this loss hung over the family like a soft, unseen cloud. His mother would often tell him, with a strange glimmer in her eyes, that he was the reincarnation of his older brother. And in those quiet moments, Salvador wondered if maybe, just maybe, there was something true in her words. Perhaps he was more than just a boy. Perhaps he had already lived another life, in another time. In the sun-drenched town of Figueras, little Salvador would spend his days wandering the streets, his eyes always searching, his mind always spinning tales. The Mediterranean breeze carried the scent of the sea, and with it, whispers of far-off lands, dreams yet to be dreamt, and ideas yet to be painted. But life, even in a small town, was not always easy. Salvador's father was a strict man, a figure of authority and discipline. He wanted his son to follow the rules, to study hard, to become something practical, someone respected in society. But Salvador, well, he was different. His heart belonged to the colors and the shapes that danced in his head, not to the rigid lines of logic and order. His mother, on the other hand, saw something special in him. She was his safe harbor, the one who nurtured his strange and wonderful dreams. With her, Salvador could be himself, wild, free, and filled with wonder. She would watch him with a gentle smile as he painted the clouds in the sky with his imagination, turning them into fantastic creatures that only he could see. Even as a child, Salvador was drawn to the world of art. He would spend hours alone, sketching, painting, and creating. His room became a sanctuary where the lines between reality and imagination blurred. He loved the feeling of a pencil in his hand, the way it could bring to life the worlds that existed only in his mind. With each stroke, he felt closer to something, a dream, a vision, a destiny. One day, young Salvador stood before a blank canvas. His heart pounded in his chest, not from fear, but from excitement. This was no ordinary canvas, it was the doorway to a world only he could enter. His hand hovered over the surface for just a moment, and then, with a single stroke, he crossed the threshold. From that day forward, Salvador Dalí would never be the same. The colors of his world grew brighter, the lines of reality softer, and the borders between dreams and waking life began to disappear. He was no longer just a boy from Figueras. He was an artist, an explorer of the surreal, a traveler between worlds. As we drift deeper into the night, we follow young Salvador's footsteps. His path is not a straight line, but a winding, twisting road through a landscape filled with dreams. Close your eyes now and imagine the boy who would one day grow into the man who painted dreams. In the quiet town of Figueras, the sun would rise slowly over the rolling hills, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch endlessly across the land. And there, in the heart of this sleepy town, a young Salvador Dalí was discovering something extraordinary, the power of art. It all started with a simple sketch, the first few lines of a world not yet fully formed. He would sit for hours, lost in thought, the tip of his pencil gently tracing shapes and figures onto the paper, as if each line carried with it a whisper from another realm. In those early days, art was not just a hobby for Salvador, it was his escape, a portal to a place where his wild imagination could roam freely, unbound by the rules of the world around him. When he was just a boy, his family sent him to the Royal Academy of Fine Arts in Madrid. It was there, in the grand halls of that ancient institution, that Salvador's journey truly began. Surrounded by the great masters of art, their paintings hanging like silent guardians on the walls, he felt a spark ignite within him. The academy was a place of discipline, of structure and tradition, but Salvador, with his rebellious spirit, would soon learn that the most beautiful things in life could not be contained within the lines of convention. His first works were traditional, as the academy required. He studied the old masters, Velázquez, Goya, and the Renaissance greats, learning their techniques, their brushstrokes, their secrets. But even then, something inside him yearned for more. He felt that art could be something else, something bigger, something that could capture not just what the eye could see, but what the heart could feel, what the mind could imagine. During his time in Madrid, Salvador began to experiment, pushing the boundaries of what was expected of him. He painted not just what he saw, but what he felt, what he dreamed. The walls of his room became a gallery of his thoughts, filled with strange and wonderful images, melting clocks, long-legged elephants, and dreamscapes that seemed to float between reality and fantasy. But while the academy taught him much, it could not teach him how to dream. That Salvador already knew. His dreams were vast and endless, like the stars that dotted the night sky, and soon he would begin to bring those dreams to life on the canvas. His teachers at the academy were both puzzled and impressed by his work. They could see the technical mastery in his paintings, but there was something else there too, something wild and untamed. Salvador was beginning to forge a path that no one else had walked before. He wasn't just copying the old masters, he was creating a new way of seeing the world, one that existed not in the rules of reality, but in the fluid, shifting world of dreams. And so, with every brushstroke, every sketch, young Salvador Dalí began to shape the future of art. He was no longer just a student, he was a visionary, a dreamer, and soon the world would see what he had seen all along. Tonight, as the night deepens and the air grows still, let us imagine young Dalí in his room, surrounded by his early works. The light is dim, the shadows long, and yet, in the quiet of that room, something extraordinary is happening. The world of Salvador Dalí is taking shape, one dream, one brushstroke at a time. In a world that seemed to move in straight lines and predictable patterns, there existed a group of dreamers who believed that reality was far more mysterious and fluid than it appeared. They called themselves the Surrealists, and their mission was to unlock the hidden world beneath the surface, the world of dreams, where logic was left behind and the impossible became possible. Salvador Dalí had always felt a pull toward this world, even before he knew its name. He had seen it in the melting clocks of his dreams, in the strange creatures that danced in his imagination, and in the shifting landscapes that appeared whenever he closed his eyes. It was as though the very fabric of reality was like soft clay in his hands, waiting to be shaped into something new. When Dalí first encountered the Surrealist movement, it was as if he had found a long-lost home. These artists and thinkers were not bound by the rules of the waking world. Instead, they embraced the chaos, the illogical, and the bizarre. To them, dreams were not just fleeting moments of sleep, but portals to a deeper truth, a truth that could be brought to life through art. Dalí's introduction to the Surrealists was like stepping through a door into a place where the impossible became real. He met with André Breton, the leader of the movement, and many other artists who had already begun to explore this strange, dreamlike realm. They spoke of Freud, of the unconscious mind, of desires and fears that lurk just below the surface of everyday life. Dalí listened, his mind racing, for here, finally, were people who understood the landscapes he had been painting in his mind for so long. Soon, Salvador became one of them, not just an artist within the movement, but one of its brightest stars. His paintings captured the very essence of the surreal, with images that felt as though they had been plucked straight from the dreams we can never quite remember. His now famous The Persistence of Memory, those soft, melting clocks draped over a barren landscape, seemed to say that time itself was fluid, a concept that could bend and stretch like the mind's own imagination. But Dalí's contribution to surrealism went far beyond his technical skills. He brought with him a vivid, almost childlike sense of wonder and an understanding that dreams were not confined to sleep. For Dalí, the dream world and the real world were two sides of the same coin, constantly shifting, overlapping, and influencing each other. His surrealist works became windows into these intertwined realms, where the lines between reality and fantasy blurred and faded away. His fellow artists were sometimes shocked, sometimes amused, but always mesmerized by his work. Dalí, with his wild mustache and even wilder ideas, was unlike anyone they had ever seen. He brought with him not just art, but a way of thinking, a way of seeing the world that invited people to step outside the confines of their everyday lives and into the vast, uncharted territory of the imagination. As we sit in the quiet of the night, let us imagine Dalí standing before a blank canvas, his eyes closed, not in sleep, but in contemplation. The room is still, yet his mind is alive, teeming with visions of melting clocks, floating faces, and dreamscapes that stretch on forever. The brush in his hand hovers just above the canvas, and with a single stroke, he brings the surreal to life, blurring the lines between waking and dreaming, between what is and what could be. This is the world of Salvador Dalí, the world of surrealism. And tonight, we walk with him through this dreamlike landscape, where the impossible becomes possible and where every brushstroke is a step deeper into the unknown. In the deepest corners of our minds, where time flows like a quiet river, there lies a place where the ordinary rules of the world no longer apply. It is a place where the past, present, and future bend and twist, as soft and malleable as clay. And it was from this dreamlike realm that Salvador Dalí reached out and pulled forth one of his most iconic creations, The Persistence of Memory. Picture a vast, empty landscape, silent except for the faint whisper of the wind. The ground beneath your feet is dry and cracked, as though time itself has forgotten this place. In the distance, jagged cliffs rise, sharp against the sky. But in this barren land, something extraordinary catches your eye. Clocks, but not the kind you know. These clocks are soft, like melting wax, draped lazily over the edges of strange objects as if they have grown tired of keeping time. In this dreamscape, time is no longer rigid, no longer a series of ticking moments that march forward in endless rhythm. Here, time melts away, dripping from the branches of a lifeless tree, slumping over a table's edge, folding upon itself like a memory fading into the recesses of the mind. And in the center of it all, a strange, almost unrecognizable figure, half creature, half human, lies asleep as if caught in a deep, timeless dream. This is The Persistence of Memory, a painting that invites you to question everything you know about the world. Dalí once said that the soft watches were inspired by the surreal image of camembert cheese melting under the hot sun, but there's more to this painting than meets the eye. It speaks to the fleeting nature of time, to the way moments slip through our fingers, softening and distorting in our memories. Dalí created this masterpiece in 1931, during a time when the world itself seemed to be unraveling. The Surrealist movement was in full bloom, and artists everywhere were delving into the mysteries of the unconscious mind, trying to capture the dreams, fears, and desires that lay just beneath the surface. But Dalí's vision was different. He didn't just paint dreams, he painted the passage of time itself, showing us how it can melt away like a fading memory, leaving behind only fragments of what once was. As you gaze upon the painting, you might wonder, what is time, really? Is it something we can hold on to, or does it slip away the moment we try to grasp it? In Dalí's world, time is fluid, flexible, and as unpredictable as our own dreams. It has no power here, no ability to confine or control. In the persistence of memory, Dalí invites us to step outside the boundaries of reality, to see time as something soft, something that bends to the will of the dreamer. But perhaps the most haunting part of the painting is not the melting clocks or the barren landscape, it is the feeling it leaves behind. A quiet, almost unsettling stillness. It's as if time has paused just for a moment, allowing us to linger in this surreal space where nothing makes sense, yet everything feels strangely familiar. It is the same sensation we feel in a dream, where the rules of reality no longer apply, and where time stretches and folds upon itself in ways that are both impossible and inevitable. As the night deepens and we drift further into the world of dreams, let us imagine ourselves standing in that barren landscape where the clocks no longer tick and time has become as soft as the breeze. Close your eyes now and let the melting clocks of Dalí's imagination guide you into a place where time does not bind us, where memories linger, and where the dreamscape is vast and endless. In the world of art, there are many who create in silence, their hands moving across the canvas in quiet solitude. But Salvador Dalí, he was different. Dalí didn't just create art, he became art. To the world, he was more than just a painter, more than just a man. He was a living, breathing enigma, a figure who seemed to step straight out of a dream, with his wild eyes and curling mustache that pointed toward the heavens. He knew that life itself was a kind of performance, and Dalí loved the stage. Whether he was walking through the streets of Paris or attending a grand gala, Salvador Dalí was always dressed to be noticed. His sharp suits, flamboyant mustache, and eccentric mannerisms made him impossible to miss. He would often stroll down the street with a pet ocelot by his side or appear in public with a glass bell over his head, as if he were some mystical creature from another world. Dalí understood that the line between reality and fantasy was thin, almost invisible. And so, he lived his life in that space between, where dreams and waking moments intertwined. To Dalí, every day was a chance to surprise the world, to blur the edges of what people expected and what was possible. He would speak in riddles and cryptic phrases, his words as strange and beautiful as his paintings. One moment, he would declare, "The only difference between a madman and me is that I am not mad." And the next, he would tell tales of seeing visions that guided his hand as he painted. To some, it seemed like madness, but to Dalí, it was simply the truth. In his world, there were no rules, no boundaries between the conscious and the unconscious, between what was real and what was imagined. But beneath the eccentricities, there was something even more magical, a deep and unwavering belief in the power of his own imagination. Dalí once said, "I don't do drugs. I am drugs." And in many ways, he was right. Being in Dalí's presence was like stepping into a dream where nothing was as it seemed, and every moment held the possibility of something extraordinary. People were drawn to him, not just for his talent, but for the way he made the world feel like a grand, surreal adventure. Dalí's mustache became his signature, a symbol of his defiance of convention. It curled upward, like the tips of a mischievous grin, as if to remind the world that life was not meant to be taken so seriously. "I am Dalí," he would proclaim, as though his very name held the power to reshape reality itself. But Dalí's eccentric public image was more than just a performance, it was an extension of his art. He knew that to truly live as an artist, one had to be the art, to breathe life into every moment. His life was not separate from his work. It was all part of the same surreal tapestry, woven together with dreams, imagination, and the belief that anything was possible. As the stars twinkle above and the world grows quiet, imagine Dalí walking through the streets, his mustache curling toward the sky, his eyes twinkling with the secrets of the universe. He walks not on solid ground, but in the space between dreams and reality, where anything can happen and where every moment is a chance to create something beautiful, something strange, something. Dalí. Close your eyes now and let his spirit guide you. For in the world of Salvador Dalí, the only limits are the ones we place on our own imaginations. In the vast and unpredictable landscape of Salvador Dalí's life, there was one figure who stood at the center of his universe, like a constant star guiding him through the endless night. Her name was Gala, and she was not just his muse, not just his wife, she was his other half, the key to unlocking the deepest corners of his imagination. Their meeting was like something out of a dream, a collision of two souls destined to find one another in the whirlwind of the surreal. Gala was mysterious, captivating, and fiercely independent, a woman who had already lived a life filled with passion and intrigue before she ever crossed paths with Dalí. But when their eyes met for the first time, it was as if time itself paused, just for a moment, and the universe shifted in a way that neither of them could fully understand. To Dalí, Gala was more than just a lover. She was a force of nature, a guiding light that cut through the swirling chaos of his thoughts. In her presence, his dreams took on new shapes, new colors. She grounded him, yet at the same time, she set his imagination free. It was as though she could see into the very depths of his soul, understanding the visions that danced in his mind when others could only see madness. Gala became his constant companion, his eternal muse. In his paintings, her face appeared time and time again, like a ghost haunting the canvases, each stroke of the brush a tribute to her. She was his Cleopatra, his Virgin Mary, his Venus rising from the sea. In Dalí's world, Gala was both goddess and queen, the embodiment of all that was powerful and beautiful. But their relationship was not without its storms. Like two wild and unpredictable forces of nature, they clashed and collided, their love filled with both passion and tension. Gala was strong, independent, and unafraid to take control, while Dalí, with his eccentricities and insecurities, often relied on her for stability. Yet, despite the tumult, their bond only seemed to grow stronger with each passing year. Gala managed not only his life, but his career, guiding him through the labyrinth of the art world, protecting him from the critics who could not understand his vision, and helping him navigate the complexities of fame. She was his protector, his anchor in a world that often felt like it was spinning out of control. But Gala was not without her own secrets. She was a woman of mystery, with desires and dreams that often took her beyond the confines of their marriage. She moved through life with a quiet grace, yet there was always something just beneath the surface, a hidden layer of complexity that only added to her allure. Dalí adored her, worshipped her, yet even he knew that there were parts of Gala that he could never fully possess. Despite this, their love endured, a strange and beautiful dance between two souls who had found one another in the most unlikely of circumstances. Together, they created not just art, but a life that was as surreal and fantastical as any of Dalí's paintings. In Gala, Dalí found not just a muse, but a partner in the truest sense of the word, someone who understood the wild, untamable nature of his mind and embraced it. As we close our eyes and drift deeper into the night, let us imagine Dalí and Gala walking hand in hand through the dreamscape that they created together. The stars above them shine brightly, reflecting in the endless sea of their shared imagination. In this world, there are no boundaries, no limits, only the love of two souls who dare to dream beyond the ordinary. And so, as the moonlight softly bathes us in its glow, we follow them into the night, where dreams and reality blur, and love, like art, becomes something eternal. In the labyrinth of Salvador Dalí's mind, there were certain ideas, images, and symbols that circled endlessly, like planets orbiting a distant sun. These were his obsessions, powerful forces that pulled him deeper into his own imagination, shaping the fantastical worlds he brought to life on canvas. To understand Dalí's art is to wander through the maze of his fixations, each one a key to unlocking the surreal dreams that whispered to him in the quiet hours of the night. One of his earliest and most profound obsessions was with dreams themselves. From a young age, Dalí had been fascinated by the strange, illogical nature of dreams, the way they could bend reality, transforming the familiar into something extraordinary. He was captivated by the works of Sigmund Freud, who explored the mysterious landscape of the unconscious mind, and Dalí eagerly embraced Freud's ideas. He believed that dreams held the secrets to the inner workings of the human psyche, and he sought to capture that dreamlike quality in his art. In Dalí's paintings, we often find ourselves in a world that feels familiar, yet utterly strange, where melting clocks, floating figures, and impossible landscapes stretch out before us like a vivid dream. These images, plucked from the depths of his subconscious, were more than just symbols. They were the language of the unconscious, a way of communicating the hidden fears, desires, and emotions that lay beneath the surface of everyday life. But dreams were not Dalí's only obsession. He was also drawn to the mysteries of time itself. Time, in Dalí's world, was not a fixed, rigid concept but something fluid, something that could stretch and melt, like in his famous painting The Persistence of Memory. To Dalí, time was an illusion, something that bent to the whims of the mind, much like a dream. In his art, clocks were not tools of measurement, they were symbols of the fragile nature of reality, of how our memories and experiences shift and change over time. Another one of Dalí's obsessions was with the concept of death. He viewed death not with fear, but with a kind of morbid fascination. For Dalí, death was just another part of the grand surrealist dream, a mystery to be explored rather than something to be feared. Skulls, bones, and decaying figures often appeared in his work, yet they were always depicted with a strange beauty, as though even death, in Dalí's world, was not an end but a transformation, a passage into another realm of existence. And then, there was his obsession with ants. In many of Dalí's paintings, we find these tiny creatures crawling across the canvas, symbols of decay and impermanence. To Dalí, the sight of ants was a reminder of the fragility of life, of how everything, no matter how grand or beautiful, would one day return to the earth. But like all things in his art, These symbols were not meant to disturb, they were simply part of the surreal dance between life and death, creation and destruction that played out in the theater of his imagination. Religion, too, held a special place in Dalí's mind. Though he often rebelled against the strict Catholic upbringing of his youth, the themes of faith, spirituality, and the divine found their way into his work. Later in his life, Dalí returned to these religious themes with a renewed sense of reverence, blending the sacred and the surreal in his exploration of Christ, angels, and the mysteries of the universe. In Dalí's hands, religious symbols took on new, otherworldly forms, as though they existed in a realm beyond our understanding. But perhaps Dalí's greatest obsession was with himself. He was fascinated by his own mind, his own image, and the idea of immortality through art. His self-portraits often depicted him not as a mere man, but as a surreal figure, a melting face, a distorted reflection, always teetering between the real and the fantastical. To Dalí, life itself was a grand performance, and he was both the director and the star. As we sit here, wrapped in the soft embrace of the night, let us imagine Dalí in his studio, surrounded by the images and symbols that haunted him. The clocks on the wall have melted, the ants crawl across the floor, and Dalí stands at the center of it all, his eyes wide with wonder. For in his world, there are no boundaries, only endless possibilities, each one an invitation to step further into the dream. Close your eyes now, and let Dalí's obsessions guide you into the strange, beautiful world he created, where every thought, every fear, every desire becomes a piece of art, and where the line between reality and fantasy disappears entirely. Every night, as the world falls into quiet slumber and the stars begin their soft dance across the sky, the boundaries of reality blur. It is in this twilight space, between waking and dreaming, that Salvador Dalí found his greatest inspiration. For Dalí, the dream world was not just a place we visited in sleep, it was a hidden realm where the deepest secrets of the mind lay waiting to be uncovered, a place where the impossible became possible, and where the subconscious whispered its most profound mysteries. Dalí was fascinated by dreams, those fleeting, ethereal moments that slip through our fingers like sand the moment we wake. But to him, dreams were not just strange, forgotten fragments of the night, they were the key to understanding the human soul. Inspired by the works of Sigmund Freud, Dalí believed that within our dreams, our true desires, fears, and emotions were revealed, free from the constraints of logic and reason. And so, he set out to capture that dreamlike quality in his art, to paint not just what the eye could see, but what the mind could imagine. In Dalí's paintings, the rules of reality no longer applied. Time melted like soft cheese under the hot sun, figures floated in the air as though gravity had forgotten its grip, and landscapes stretched and twisted in impossible ways. His canvases were dreamscapes, windows into the subconscious, where everything felt both familiar and strange, as though we had seen these places before, but only in the deepest corners of our minds. But Dalí's dream world was not a place of comfort. It was a place where the shadows of the mind came to life, where fears and anxieties took shape as bizarre creatures in distorted forms. In his painting, the elephants, towering, impossibly thin-legged creatures march across the horizon, their long, spindly legs making them appear as if they are walking through a dream, both majestic and unsettling. These elephants, symbols of strength, are transformed in the dream world, their power tempered by their surreal, fragile appearance. Dalí believed that dreams held the power to unlock truths about ourselves that we often tried to hide or ignore. In his painting Sleep, A giant, disembodied face rests on fragile crutches, suspended in a dreamlike state between consciousness and the deep abyss of sleep. The crutches, a recurring symbol in Dalí's work, represent the fragile supports that hold up our waking reality, suggesting that our grasp on the world is tenuous at best. In this dream world, we are vulnerable, exposed to the deepest layers of our subconscious, where desires, fears, and memories blur into one. But Dalí's dreams were not just nightmares. They were also places of beauty, where the imagination could soar without limits. In the dream caused by the flight of a bee around a pomegranate a second before awakening, a woman floats serenely above the ground, surrounded by strange and surreal figures, a tiger leaping out of the mouth of a fish, a pomegranate bursting open like a tiny world. This painting, like so many of Dalí's works, captures the fleeting nature of dreams, that moment just before waking when the mind is suspended between two worlds and anything is possible. Dalí once said, "I don't paint dreams, I paint my own reality." And indeed, in his reality, dreams and waking life were one and the same. He lived as though the dream world was always just beneath the surface, waiting to break through, and his paintings were windows into that realm where the subconscious ruled and the laws of physics were merely suggestions. As the night deepens and we drift further into our own dreams, let us imagine Dalí standing before his canvas, his brush poised in the air. The room is silent, but in his mind, a world is coming to life, a world where clocks melt, elephants walk on spider-like legs, and the subconscious reveals its hidden wonders. Close your eyes now, and let yourself be drawn into this dreamscape, where reality bends and the imagination knows no bounds. In the quiet moments between brushstrokes, when the world outside his studio seemed to stand still, Salvador Dalí's mind wandered to the farthest reaches of the universe. Beyond the dreamscapes, beyond the realms of the subconscious, there lay another world that fascinated him, a world of atoms, stars, and the invisible forces that shape reality itself. Dalí, the dreamer, was also a scientist of the imagination, forever curious about the mysteries of the cosmos and the hidden laws that govern the universe. As a child, Dalí had been captivated by the wonders of the natural world. He spent hours collecting stones, shells, and insects, marveling at the delicate patterns nature had woven into the smallest of things. But as he grew older, it wasn't just nature that intrigued him, it was the emerging world of science and technology. The discoveries of the 20th century, from the splitting of the atom to the exploration of space, stirred something deep within him, and soon his art began to reflect these new frontiers. In the years following the invention of the atomic bomb, Dalí became obsessed with the concept of the atom. To him, the atom represented the ultimate paradox. It was both the building block of all matter and a force capable of unimaginable destruction. He once declared, "I want to perceive and understand the hidden powers and mysteries of life." And so, he began to explore the atomic world through his art, blending the scientific with the surreal. In his painting The Disintegration of the Persistence of Memory, Dalí revisited his iconic image of the melting clocks, but this time, the dreamlike landscape was breaking apart, fragmenting into tiny, floating particles, as though the very fabric of reality were disintegrating at the atomic level. The clocks, once symbols of time's fluidity, now seemed to be suspended in a state of decay, their form dissolving into a sea of tiny atomic particles. It was Dalí's way of visualizing the invisible forces that held the universe together, and how easily those forces could unravel. But Dali's fascination with science didn't stop at the atom. He was also drawn to the mysteries of the cosmos, the stars, the planets, and the vastness of space. In his later works, we see the influence of this cosmic curiosity as figures float weightlessly in dreamlike galaxies, their forms twisted and stretched by the gravitational pull of distant stars. In paintings like Galatea of the Spheres, Dalí portrayed his muse, Gala, as a divine figure made up of spheres, each representing the building blocks of the universe. It was as if she had become one with the cosmos, her form dissolving into the infinite dance of the planets and stars. Dalí's interest in science wasn't just about exploring the physical world, it was also about understanding the nature of existence itself. He was deeply intrigued by the idea of time, not just as a concept, but as a force that shaped reality. In his painting The Elephants, the long-legged creatures seemed to defy the laws of physics, standing tall and impossibly delicate, as though time and space had been stretched beyond their limits. These surreal images, influenced by the theories of relativity and quantum mechanics, reflected Dalí's belief that reality was far more fluid and strange than it appeared. He was also fascinated by the advancements in technology, particularly the rise of photography and cinema. Dalí believed that these new mediums offered a way to capture reality in a way that painting alone could not. He experimented with holography, creating three-dimensional images that seemed to hover in midair, as though they existed in a space between reality and illusion. In his collaboration with filmmakers like Alfred Hitchcock and Walt Disney, Dalí brought his surreal visions to life, merging the dream world with the cutting-edge technology of the day. But perhaps most fascinating of all was Dalí's belief that science and spirituality were not opposing forces, but two sides of the same coin. He saw in the atomic structure of the universe a reflection of the divine, believing that the discoveries of modern science only serve to reveal the deeper mysteries of existence. In his painting The Sacrament of the Last Supper, Dalí combined religious imagery with the geometric precision of scientific forms, creating a vision where the divine and the scientific were united in a single, harmonious whole. As the night grows deeper and the stars begin to twinkle in the sky, let us imagine Dalí standing beneath those same stars, gazing up in wonder at the vastness of the universe. To him, the stars were not just distant lights, they were the building blocks of dreams, the atoms of the imagination, spinning in an endless dance of creation and destruction. Close your eyes now, and let your mind drift beyond the earth, beyond the boundaries of time and space, into the cosmic world of Salvador Dalí, where science, art, and dreams become one. In the quiet hours of the night, when the stars shimmered like tiny candles in the vast cathedral of the sky, Salvador Dalí often found himself contemplating the mysteries of the divine. Though he had once rebelled against the strict religious teachings of his youth, as he grew older, Dalí's art began to reflect a deep, almost reverent fascination with faith, spirituality, and the idea of a higher power. But, as with everything in Dalí's world, these themes of religion were not presented in the way we might expect. No, in his hands, even the sacred became surreal. Dalí was a master of contradiction. He was a man of science and logic, but also a dreamer and mystic. He understood that life's greatest mysteries could not be fully explained by reason alone, and so he turned to religion, not as an answer, but as a lens through which to explore the unknown. In his later works, Dalí began to blend religious imagery with his surrealist visions, creating a unique world where the spiritual and the surreal coexisted in perfect harmony. One of Dalí's most famous religious works is Christ of St. John of the Cross, a painting that presents a radically different perspective on one of the most iconic religious symbols, the crucifixion of Christ. But instead of depicting Christ's suffering, as was traditional, Dalí chose to show him from above, as though floating in the heavens, suspended over a calm and serene sea. Christ's body, though bound to the cross, appears weightless, almost as if he is ascending into the sky. In this painting, the crucifixion is not a moment of pain, but a moment of transcendence, where the earthly and the divine become one. For Dalí, the image of Christ was not just a symbol of faith, but a representation of something much larger, the mystery of existence itself. He once said, "I believe in God, but I have no faith. Mathematics and science tell me that God must exist, but I don't believe in him." In his art, this paradox is clear. His religious works are filled with a sense of awe and wonder, yet they are also infused with the surreal, reminding us that the divine, like all things in Dalí's world, exists beyond the boundaries of logic and reason. In the sacrament of the Last Supper, Dalí blended the sacred with the scientific. The apostles sit around a table, with Christ at the center, but above them looms a massive, transparent figure, a geometric vision of the divine. The table itself is placed inside a dodecahedron, a 12-sided shape that, in ancient philosophy, was believed to represent the universe. Here, Dalí merges the spiritual with the mathematical, suggesting that the divine is not separate from the physical world, but an intrinsic part of its very structure. Dalí's fascination with religious imagery extended beyond Christianity. He was deeply influenced by the mysticism of other traditions, particularly the works of the Renaissance masters, whose paintings were filled with sacred symbols and divine light. In his painting The Madonna of Port Legate, Dalí presented the Virgin Mary and the Christ child in a surreal, fragmented world. Mary's body is hollowed out, as though she is more spirit than flesh, and within her, the Christ child floats, surrounded by delicate, floating objects. The scene is otherworldly, yet there is a quiet sense of peace, as though Dalí has captured a moment of divine stillness in the midst of the surreal. But perhaps the most striking example of Dalí's religious imagery is found in his obsession with the figure of the angel. In many of his later works, angels appear as both protectors and guides, leading humanity through the mysteries of life and death. In The Ascension of Christ, Dalí depicted Christ rising into the heavens, surrounded by swirling, golden light. His body is stretched and elongated, as though he is being pulled upward by the divine forces of the universe. The image is both beautiful and strange, reminding us that in Dalí's world, the divine is always just out of reach, an eternal mystery waiting to be explored. As we sit here, under the same stars that once inspired Dalí, let us imagine the artist standing before his canvas, his mind filled with visions of angels, saints, and sacred symbols. The room is silent, but in Dalí's heart, the mysteries of the universe pulse like a quiet, steady drum. He lifts his brush, and with each stroke, he brings the divine closer, weaving together the threads of faith and imagination into something that defies explanation, something that is not just seen, but felt. Close your eyes now, and let yourself be carried into this world of divine dreams, where the sacred and the surreal merge, and where the mysteries of the universe unfold like a delicate, eternal dance. In a world where dreams blend with reality and time melts away like soft wax under the sun, there was one man who dared to walk the line between the strange and the familiar, the surreal and the everyday. Salvador Dalí was not just an artist, He was a force of nature, a figure who seemed to transcend the boundaries of the art world and step into the realm of pop culture, leaving his mark on everything he touched. As Dalí wandered through life, with his flamboyant mustache curling toward the sky and his eccentric outfits turning heads wherever he went, he became a living work of art. The world couldn't help but be fascinated by him, this man who spoke in riddles, painted melting clocks, and carried an air of mystery that seemed to follow him like a shadow. But Dalí's influence didn't end with his paintings. It spread like ripples in a pond, reaching into the world of film, fashion, advertising, and even the wild imaginations of musicians and writers. In the 1930s and 1940s, Dalí's surreal visions began to seep into the world of cinema. His collaboration with Alfred Hitchcock on the iconic dream sequence in the film Spellbound brought his bizarre, dreamlike imagery to the silver screen. In this scene, reality bends and twists, eyes float in the air, and shadows stretch out like long fingers. It was a moment that left audiences breathless, a glimpse into the mind of Dalí where the ordinary rules of life no longer applied. And so, his art began to take on new life and motion, becoming more than just something to look at, it became something to experience. But it wasn't just the world of film that embraced Dalí's surrealist touch. In the world of fashion, designers looked to him for inspiration. His collaborations with the legendary fashion designer Elsa Schiaparelli resulted in clothing that blurred the line between art and fashion. Together, they created the famous lobster dress, a surrealist masterpiece where the elegant lines of a simple dress were interrupted by the startling image of a lobster painted across its front. Dalí's influence transformed fashion into something that could be both wearable and wildly imaginative, as though each garment carried a piece of his dreamlike world. And then there were the advertisements, perhaps the most surprising place where Dalí's surrealist visions found a home. In the 1960s, Dalí collaborated with major brands like Landon and Alka-Seltzer, creating commercials that were unlike anything anyone had seen before. In one famous Alka-Seltzer ad, Dalí proclaimed, "I am crazy about Alka-Seltzer," as he appeared in his usual flamboyant style, transforming a simple product into something magical and strange. His unmistakable presence turned even the most mundane products into works of art, filled with a touch of surrealism. Musicians, too, found themselves drawn into Dalí's strange, wonderful world. The rock band The Velvet Underground, known for their experimental and avant-garde music, counted Dalí as an influence. His spirit of rebellion, of breaking away from the ordinary, resonated with the counterculture movements of the 1960s and 70s. Dalí's art, with its dreamlike visions and defiance of logic, mirrored the music and creativity of a generation that wanted to push the boundaries of what was possible. But perhaps the most lasting testament to Dalí's influence on pop culture is the way his image itself became iconic. His trademark mustache, long and curled at the tips, has become a symbol of surrealism, instantly recognizable even to those who may not know his art in detail. From comic strips to cartoons, Dalí's likeness has been immortalized in countless forms of media. Even today, his face and his art continue to inspire new generations of artists, musicians, filmmakers, and dreamers who see in Dalí the possibility of living life as a work of art. As we sit here, the night quiet and calm, let us imagine Salvador Dalí walking through the streets, his mustache twisting toward the heavens, his eyes gleaming with mischief and mystery. Everywhere he goes, he leaves behind a trail of wonder, a ripple of surrealism that stretches out into the world, touching everything from the art galleries of Paris to the fashion runways of New York, from the bright lights of Hollywood to the dreamy notes of rock and roll. Close your eyes now, and let Dalí's influence wash over you. For in the world of pop culture, as in the world of dreams, Salvador Dalí is always there, whispering from the edges, reminding us that life is not just to be lived, but to be imagined. Once upon a time, in the small town of Figueres, where Salvador Dalí's extraordinary journey had begun, there stood an old, crumbling theater. It was a place that had once been filled with the laughter and applause of audiences, but over time it had fallen into silence, its walls echoing only with the whispers of forgotten performances. But Dalí, with his visionary eyes, saw something different in this quiet, forgotten place. To him, it was not just a building, it was the perfect stage upon which to leave behind his greatest work, his legacy. In the 1960s, Dalí began to transform this old theater into what would become one of the most surreal and magical places on earth, the Dalí Theater Museum. But this was no ordinary museum. No, Dalí did not want a simple gallery filled with paintings hanging quietly on the walls. He wanted something far grander, something that would reflect the wild, fantastical worlds he had created throughout his life. This museum would not just display art, it would be art. As you approach the museum, the first thing you see are the strange, golden eggs perched on top of the building, like giant symbols of birth and creation. These eggs, shimmering in the sunlight, seem to promise that inside, you will step into a place where anything is possible. The museum's facade is painted a deep, vibrant red, like the rich colors of a dream, and as you walk through its doors, you are no longer in the ordinary world, you are in Dalí's world. Inside, the museum unfolds like a journey through the corridors of Dalí's mind. The walls are adorned with his paintings, each one more surreal than the last, pulling you deeper into the strange landscapes and dreamlike visions that he had spent his life creating. Here, clocks melt and time loses its meaning, elephants walk on impossibly long legs, and faces stretch and twist into the most unexpected forms. Every corner you turn reveals something new, something that feels as though it was plucked directly from a dream. But the museum is more than just a place to see Dalí's paintings. It is a living, breathing work of art in itself. The floors, the ceilings, the very walls seem to pulse with his energy, as though you have stepped into one of his surrealist masterpieces. In the center of it all stands the stage of the old theater, transformed into a fantastical dreamscape where Dalí's spirit still lingers, as if he might step out from behind the curtains at any moment, his mustache curling mischievously, ready to greet you. One of the most striking features of the museum is the geodesic dome that crowns the building, a structure that seems to reach toward the heavens, as if inviting the stars themselves to come inside. This dome, designed by architect Emilio Pérez Pinheiro, is a symbol of Dalí's belief that art should have no boundaries, that it should stretch beyond the confines of the canvas and touch the infinite. Inside the dome, the light filters through in a way that feels otherworldly, casting strange, dancing shadows that seem to shift and change as you move. But perhaps the most fascinating part of the Dalí Theater Museum is that it is not just a monument to Dalí's past, it is also his final resting place. Beneath the museum, in a crypt hidden away from the bustle of the visitors above, Dalí himself lies buried. It is fitting that the artist who blurred the lines between life and art, between reality and dreams, would choose to spend eternity in a place that exists on the edge of both. In this surreal museum, Dalí's spirit lingers, his presence felt in every brushstroke, every sculpture, every corner of the building. As we sit here, imagining the museum with its golden eggs and geodesic dome, let us remember that this place is not just a collection of art, it is a portal into the mind of one of the most extraordinary dreamers the world has ever known. The Dalí Theater Museum is a place where reality dissolves into fantasy, where dreams take shape and live on long after the dreamer has gone. Close your eyes now and picture yourself walking through those grand doors, stepping into Dalí's imagination. The walls around you pulse with color, the air hums with possibility, and somewhere in the depths of the museum, Salvador Dalí himself is waiting, his legacy, his dreams, wrapped in the strange, beautiful world he left behind. Long after Salvador Dalí's brush made its final stroke, his influence continues to ripple through the world of art like waves on a still pond. His mustache may no longer curl toward the heavens, but the surreal worlds he created still float in the imaginations of countless artists, dreamers, and creators. Dalí's spirit, his wild creativity, and his refusal to be confined by the boundaries of reality have left an indelible mark on modern art, a mark that grows deeper with each passing year. To understand Dalí's lasting influence, we must first step back and see the world as he did, not as a fixed and rigid place, but as a fluid dream where the lines between the real and the surreal are constantly shifting. It is this vision, this belief that art can be anything, that has inspired generations of artists to push beyond the limits of what is possible. Dalí taught the world that art should not just reflect reality, it should transform it. Today, his fingerprints can be seen in the work of contemporary artists across the globe. From the bold, dreamlike paintings of digital artists who blend reality with fantasy, to sculptors who twist everyday objects into surreal shapes, Dalí's influence is everywhere. His ability to bring the subconscious to life through art has inspired artists to explore their own inner worlds, to let their imaginations run free, and to express the most impossible of dreams. Take, for instance, the world of street art, where walls in cities around the world have become canvases for surreal, larger-than-life murals. In the twisting shapes, the vivid colors, and the unexpected juxtapositions, we see the echoes of Dalí's surrealist visions. Artists today are not afraid to play with perspective, to melt and reshape the familiar into something strange and new, just as Dalí once did with his famous melting clocks and impossible landscapes. Even in the world of fashion, Dalí's legacy lives on. Designers continue to draw inspiration from his boldness, his willingness to embrace the bizarre, and his belief that art and fashion could merge into one. Runways today are filled with garments that blur the line between wearable clothing and high art, much like Dalí's collaborations with Elsa Schiaparelli, which forever changed the way we think about fashion as an art form. Dalí's surrealist touch can also be found in modern film and digital media. Filmmakers who craft dreamlike, visually stunning worlds owe a debt to Dalí's groundbreaking work with cinema. His influence can be seen in the fantastical landscapes of movies, where the laws of time and space no longer apply, and in the eerie, surreal scenes that blur the line between reality and illusion. Directors like David Lynch and Tim Burton, known for their surreal and dreamlike films, have often acknowledged the ways Dalí shaped their artistic vision, inspiring them to challenge the boundaries of storytelling and visual art. But perhaps Dalí's greatest legacy lies not in any single piece of art, but in the way he showed the world that imagination knows no limits. He gave artists permission to dream wildly, to break the rules, and to create from a place deep within the subconscious, where logic is not the master. In this way, Dali's influence is not just seen, it is felt. His spirit lives on in every artist who dares to take risks, who dares to make the impossible real. As the moonlight softly bathes the world tonight, let us imagine Dali's influence as a golden thread, weaving through time, connecting past, present, and future. This thread touches every artist who dares to dream, who dares to create something extraordinary from the ordinary. It stretches across generations, across mediums, from the paintbrush to the digital screen, from the fashion runways to the walls of city streets. And as long as there are dreamers, as long as there are artists willing to push beyond the boundaries of what is known, Dali's influence will continue to shine. Close your eyes now, and let Dali's spirit guide you through the world of modern art, where his surreal vision still lives, hidden in the corners of the canvas, in the folds of fabric, in the flicker of the movie screen. For in every brushstroke, in every bold creation, Salvador Dali's dream carries on, endless, eternal. As the journey through the strange and wondrous world of Salvador Dalí comes to a close, we are left with the echoes of his imagination, lingering like the final notes of a forgotten lullaby. Dalí was more than a painter, more than a dreamer. He was a magician of the mind, capable of transforming the most ordinary of things into something extraordinary, something that could make us question the very nature of reality. In Dalí's world, clocks melted under the sun, tigers leapt from the mouths of fish, and the human face stretched and morphed into fantastical forms. But these images, as surreal and strange as they were not just illusions. They were reflections of something deeper, whispers from the subconscious, the hidden realm of the mind where dreams are born and where the impossible becomes possible. Dalí's genius was not only in what he created, but in how he saw the world. He taught us that art is not confined to a canvas, that life itself can be a work of art, if only we dare to see it that way. He dared to live in the space between reality and dreams, and in doing so, invited us all to step through that same door into a place where imagination knows no boundaries. Even now, long after his passing, Dalí's presence lingers in the air, like the scent of an old perfume that never quite fades away. His art continues to inspire, to provoke, to make us wonder, what is real? What is imagined? And does it even matter? For in Dalí's eyes, the two were always intertwined, dancing together in an endless waltz of creativity. The Dalí Theater Museum in Figueres, with its golden eggs and shimmering dome, stands as a testament to his eternal influence. It is a place where time itself seems to bend, where the walls hum with the energy of his imagination, and where his spirit still resides, waiting to greet each new visitor with a mischievous smile. But perhaps Dalí's greatest legacy is not just in the works he left behind, but in the way he changed how we see the world. He gave us permission to dream, to embrace the surreal, to find beauty in the bizarre, and to see the extraordinary in the everyday. He reminded us that life, like art, is filled with mystery and magic, and that the greatest adventure of all is to live as though anything is possible. As the night deepens and the stars twinkle softly overhead, let us take a moment to reflect on the genius of Salvador Dalí. Close your eyes and imagine him now, standing before a vast, blank canvas, his brush poised in the air. In that moment, all the possibilities of the universe are before him, waiting to be painted, waiting to be dreamed into existence. And as we drift into sleep, let us carry with us a piece of that dream, knowing that in Dalí's world, the dream never truly ends, it only begins again with each new breath. For in the end, Salvador Dalí did not just paint dreams. He lived them. And so, we have traveled through the winding corridors of Salvador Dalí's mind, where dreams and reality have danced together under the stars. His world, a place where time melts and imagination reigns, has welcomed us like a dream within a dream, a space where the impossible unfolds before our very eyes. As the final brushstrokes of this journey come to a close, we are reminded that Dalí's story is not truly over. It lives on, in every dream we dare to dream, in every wild idea we allow ourselves to explore. For Dalí taught us that the greatest art is not just what we see with our eyes, but what we feel with our hearts, what we dare to imagine when the world is still and our minds are free. Tonight, as we drift into our own dreams, let us carry with us the spirit of Salvador Dalí, the endless wonder, the curiosity, and the joy of creating a world that is uniquely our own. Let his surreal visions guide us into a place where clocks melt, where elephants walk on the air, and where every moment is filled with the magic of possibility. And so, dear listener, we close this chapter not with an end, but with a beginning. For in the dreamscapes of Dalí, nothing ever truly ends. It simply transforms, like the brushstrokes of a painting that never stops growing, never stops dreaming. Close your eyes, and let the dream continue.